back for another update. Today is Friday, December 19th, 2024, and I am up on Potts Mountain on a place called Hanging Rock on Potts Mountain. I got dropped off in that direction where the road crosses the mountaintop and walked over here along this ridge line. There's the valley down below. And there's the gap where Paint Bank is, just below that gap in that ridge line. That's all Middle Mountain. And then there's the gap in Shawvers Run Wilderness. Right there. And then Peters Mountain is beyond that. And then look, that's looking into West Virginia, and from here I could see the mountains in the distance. Look like they got snow on them. Over in West Virginia up toward Snowshoe area that's looking, and I do see some white on some of those mountaintops. Those appear to have snow up there. Where that's looking toward Covington. And this is a place again called Hanging Rock. It hangs out over the valley. It is accessible by gravel road, which I walked along that road to get here. And that's all again, Shawvers Run Wilderness, as well as where I'm standing, and it extends. That's Little Mountain just behind the flagpole. And the ridge that connects to Little Mountain to Potts is to the right of that flag. And that's Potts that continues northeastward from here. Again, that's looking up toward into West Virginia, toward the higher peaks on to the northwest of us. And those are the mountains that usually catch all the snow before it gets here. And it's clear enough today to see those mountains pretty clearly from here. And there is a trail about a half mile, a little less, that leads to this spot off that gravel road. There is a place to park as well, small trailhead. So I gotta get going because it's already well after 2 o'clock. And our plan is to head down through that, possibly through that gap there, to get back to Route 18. There is supposedly an unofficial trail that takes you down there. That's 2.7 miles long. That is my plan, to seek out that trail today and head down. So this is the trail that takes you back to the gravel road, and then my plan is to walk the gravel road probably about another mile and a half to where this other trail supposedly meets up with it. And I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do yet, whether I'm going to head toward Paint Bank or head through that gap. Depends on how much daylight I got left when I get down there. I do have a headlamp in case it gets dark on me. My plan is to be picked up either in Paint Bank or in yeah, it looks like there's even a bit of a trail that comes down from here in this direction. I'm going to just look at it a bit. I mean, it's not part of the official trail, but yeah, it looks like there is a bit of a trail that heads down in that direction. And there's the rocks from this angle. What I'm going to talk about today is more on climate history, I know that in past videos I've talked about how the sun for the past 70 years has been, overall I'm talking about, the last cycle was week 24, but the past 7 cycles overall have been one of the most active periods of the sun in perhaps hundreds of years. A video I was watching, they claimed that this is the most active period since the end of the Ice Age that brought us out of the Ice Age. I'm not sure if that's really the case or not, because we don't have reliable records of the sun going back beyond the Maunder minimum, which is in the 1600s. My guess is that the sun was very likely more active during the medieval warm period for perhaps centuries than now, and during Roman times, and perhaps it was more active as well than present day. And you got kind of a taste of that with the 2 cycles in the 80s, where the drop off to the maximum, to the minimum, and back up to the next cycle was very quick. We had years of elevated activity during that time period between 1979 and 1992. That 13-year period constituted one of the most consistently active periods on the sun. I feel that led to the Arctic sea ice almost disappearing and completely melting off in 2007. We came very close to losing all of our Arctic ice that year. Of course, they blamed that on man-made global warming, and that's when Al Gore came out and predicted. And at that point in time, he could have been actually right if the trend continued. And a lot of people mock him now. But based on the trends, almost half the Arctic Ocean was open at the end of the summer that year. You know, basically barely half of the Arctic Ocean that year, the minimum, was covered with ice. And then it went even lower than that in 2012. A bit lower, not by much. There's a little campsite here. Anybody's interested in spending the night up here? There's a little campsite right there. So, Al Gore, with his prediction that by 2014 the ice would be gone, that was based on the trends over the past several years that led up to that. We lost a lot of ice between 1999 and 2007. Ice in the Arctic fell off a cliff during that period. The Arctic sea ice. But since 2007, which again is a pivotal year I talk about frequently, where the sun apparently shifted gears, became less active. Of course, there's a significant lag effect with Arctic sea ice. Because much of the melting was caused by the flow of warm ocean currents up into the Arctic. Between Greenland and Iceland and British Isles, the Gulf Stream pushed a lot of warm water up through there, and I believe a lot of this was warmth transported from those periods in the 80s and the 70 prior years of high solar activity that almost completely wiped out our Arctic sea ice. How come it's not wiped out? Because global warming stopped in 2007 and turned into global cooling. Thus, the Arctic ice for now has stabilized. We're not losing any more ice up there. But we were close to the threshold of losing all the ice 15 years ago. And it still has not recovered and has not started to come back up to its pre-2007 levels. It's not going as low, but it's still down there. But we're not losing any more ice. It's pretty much steady. And as I talked about a few videos back, the glaciers that had been receding around 2020 began to advance in many areas. I'm looking at the images. And again, glaciers' movements are a lag effect from it takes time for the glaciers to respond. It's like stopping a freight train. If they're receding, even if the climate begins to reverse itself, it takes time for the glaciers to respond. There's a lag effect involved. As a lot of us know, during the Maunder Minimum, glaciers reached their greatest extent in Europe since the last ice age. Very likely since the last ice age. It was the coldest period in climate since the last ice age, and then about 1850, the glaciers began to retreat. Because the sun began ramping up again a little bit during that period. The retreat stopped during the early 1900s because we had a couple more weak cycles in the sun. And then we entered the 70-year period of increased solar activity, which rapidly melted the ice up in the Arctic regions, especially initially, and sent the glaciers into a rapid retreat. Are we going to eventually lose all the ice in the Arctic? And if we did, what would be the implications of it? We came pretty close. And it's still not a given that it's not going to happen, even if the climate begins to cool. It's hard to say how much more warm water is left to be had to circulate up in that region to melt more ice. And I feel all it would take is another active cycle or two of the sun to completely melt it up there. And Would that be caused by man? No, it would be the sun. Basically, as I've touched on before, the Arctic sea ice, I feel, didn't really form up there until perhaps the 1700s. It took a couple centuries of colder temperatures to refreeze the North Pole. And you think about a lake, if it's a similar principle. The Arctic Ocean is like a huge lake. Once that all melts, it would take a lot of cold weather to refreeze it. Like, it would have to get really, really cold to refreeze it. We would enter a new climate regime. During warmer periods, it would mean a benign climate. Winters would be very mild and relatively storm-free compared to what we see today, and summers would be probably very hot. But it would benefit places like Canada, Russia, where the agriculture would be very favorable. Canada would have the climate of the U.S. experiences now. It would be a dramatic shift in climate if all the ice up there disappeared, because it would be a lot harder to get Arctic air in the wintertime. And there's a yellow blaze. This trail is blazed with yellow. Squeeze under this tree. So, again, during colder periods, during periods of cooling, the ocean would not up there immediately refreeze, because it's such a huge body of water. It would take a long time to refreeze it once it's melted. Consistently colder temperatures would be required. It's just like a large lake. It's the same principle. This is why I feel that during most of historical times, it was open water up there, and probably until about the 1700s. The Arctic was ice-free in terms of the Arctic Ocean. Greenland ice cap did not melt off, of course, but the ocean, it's sea ice, meaning that the sea levels would not be terribly affected by that, because it's all floating ice. That would not raise the sea levels if we lost the ice up there by much, maybe very little, if any. But it would significantly affect the weather patterns without that ice up there anymore, in ways that are not fully understood. I feel that most certainly during the medieval warm period, there was no ice up there. If they could have agriculture on Greenland and settle the place, yeah, it was definitely ice-free. And I feel that way because, again, in 2007, the Arctic Ocean was halfway there to being ice-free. I really felt, even though I don't believe in man-made global warming, that we were going to lose all our ice after that. I felt that way. The trends were moving in that direction. So here's the trailhead coming up. As you can see, there is a little area for parking available. It is gravel. Road is gravel as well. Even a little camping spot here. And here's the trailhead itself, Shawvers Run wilderness. A little bit of a map as to where this is. And this is the road that accesses this. It is passable with a regular vehicle. It's just a couple spots from this direction where rocks are sticking up. You may have to be careful navigating around them so you don't bottom out, but most of the road is pretty decent for travel to get here. And people actually do live up here on top. There's a house in that direction. I can hear the dogs. So what I'm saying is the Arctic sea ice, even though 2007 things turned around, it's hard to say whether it went beyond the threshold where we're going to lose it all or not, even if the climate cools slightly. Because we have not seen a recovery either since then. It's still running way lower than it was prior to the 2000s. Does that mean that man caused it through his activities? No. Because as I said again, much of history, I feel that the ocean up there, legends even confirm it. Many legends talk about how the Arctic was a warmer place. Open water, warmth. This is called Hanging Rock Circle, a little road. Actually, people live on it. And to the left is the wilderness area. Well, we're actually kind of in it now. But from this point on, the road gets a lot more dicey to travel on. You probably would need a four-wheel drive to get here from this direction. So I've been just talking about Arctic sea ice and the fluctuations in recent times. And I feel that the Arctic sea ice is the last area to respond to a change or shift in climate. The reason why, again, we almost lost it all in 2007 and 2012 is this is a lag effect from the 70 years of increased solar activity we've experienced, cumulative effect of the oceans absorbing that heat and transporting it through currents. Also, I've seen lots of research on convection and its role in transporting heat from the tropics to the polar regions as well. Though I feel that most of the Arctic ice melt was more from warm ocean currents flowing into the Arctic area than the warm air temperatures. So, as you can see, there are huge puddles across the roadway here. That's why it would be advisable for four-wheel drive through here. And there's a view looking to the east. So this is going to be it. I hope you found this discussion interesting on the fluctuations of Arctic ice. Again, not being caused by the activities of man, as many claim. Carbon dioxide, most of the carbon dioxide fluctuations are caused by the oceans, not by man's activities. Man is minuscule. We may think he contributes a lot, but compared to the oceans, the amount of carbon dioxide that the water holds, man's activities are barely a drop in the bucket in that equation. That's going to be it. I will be back soon.